Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on She's Invincible, and I am excited to introduce you to this invincible one today. Scott Ramey, communication expert and speaker who wasn't always comfortable in the spotlight. For years, he wore a mask of confidence while battling inner turmoil. On the outside, he was a highly successful businessman guiding Fortune 500 companies to billions in new business. But on the inside, he fought a silent war against crippling panic and anxiety every time he stepped into the spotlight. His journey through corporate giants like Transamerica, Nationwide, and AIG Corebridge Financial forged his innovative approach to communication, born from necessity and refined through experience. Through relentless determination, he conquered his demons and transformed his anxiety into authentic, powerful communication. This personal evolution led to the Ramey method, built on his speak. It's not just about polishing skills, it's about rewiring how leaders connect, inspire, and drive results. His bachelor's in history from John Carroll University gives him a unique lens, blending historical insight with modern business acumen to tackle today's leadership challenges. Scott's mission is deeply personal, to help anxious presenters find their voice and own the room. Walked in your shoes, he's felt the fear, and he's found a way through. Now he's here to guide you on your journey from survival to thriving, just as he did. Let's turn your presentation anxiety into your greatest strength. Let's turn your presentation anxiety into your greatest strength. Oh my gosh. Scott Ramey, welcome. Welcome to She's Invincible. Today we are doing He's Invincible. And thank you for being here. Thank you for being invincible and for being bold and brave and courageous to share all that you know from your journey to help others.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here, Cami. I'm going to have to come on every day to get hyped up. This is fantastic.
Oh my gosh, well, I'll record this to you and I'll send it to your wife so she can hit play every morning for the beeping.
I think I'm going to add it as my recording. Yeah.
I love it.
And
well, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's so to have you and to be able to kick this series off with this topic.
Thank you. And congratulations on the success of your show and the lives you're impacting on a weekly and monthly basis. So it's really, really cool. And I'm flattered to be a part of your show. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, let's jump in.
Sure.
Let's get started. Let's tell our listeners, how in the world did you get where you are today and what makes you invincible?
Yes, no, thank you. And hearing you read my bio, I was like, wow, that's not bad for a kid from Simple, Indiana. So, and that's really the heart of my success, honestly. If I think back in terms of the childhood and how I was raised and where I was raised. And so I grew up in small town Indiana. I think you can tell a lot about somebody based upon where they're from. And the town I grew up in is called Crawfordsville, Indiana. I call a large county seat west of Indianapolis, 15,000 people. It really had one major employer at the time, which was R.R. Donnelley, and then was agriculture. But the thing about the community and my family was that I was supported. And I mean supported. I'll never forget that my team was second place in the state AAU basketball tournament when we were U13. And I had to raise money for us to fly to Seattle, and it was going to be my first flight. And I literally went door to door with my mom by my side, but she was kind of sitting in the back, and to raise money. And I think the goal was like $1,400 per kid. It was pretty expensive back in the late 80s. And in my community we raised almost $8,500. And so just to give you a sense of how I was supported. And I was one of 4 boys. And, my mom had a rule that if any one of us got in a fight, we better all get in that same fight. So there's like this vicious support. I mean, really in a positive way. And that helped me a lot. It helped me in terms of my goals and my dreams and my aspirations. And I played Division I basketball right out of high school. I was the first athlete in our high school's history to get a Division I scholarship. But then I found myself at 19 years old going to let the coaches know that I was transferring. And the first person I ran into was Ray Kist, who was our athletic trainer. And Ray and I spent a lot of time together because over the 24-month period, I was on crutches 18 of 24 months before a broken foot. Ray knew me really, really well. He knew what was going on with my family. My parents had just had a divorce. Anyway, long story short, I found myself having a panic attack when I started with having a conversation with Ray about leaving. First time ever. So like imagine this invincible, I mean, literally, you want to talk about invincible? This invincible guy, this young man who could do nothing wrong and had kind of the world was my oyster, so to speak. And I find myself having a panic attack at 19. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And if any of your audience members have had a panic attack, they know precisely what it means. But for those who haven't, the worst thing about a panic attack, and this is really Mayo Clinic's words, not mine, is the idea that you're going to have another one and another one. So it's the fear of, yes, the rapid heartbeat, the nausea, the sweat, the shaky legs, the trembling heart. I mean, all of that is very, very real. The tunnel vision, like you just kind of disconnected from your body, all that's very real. But it's just endooming, this kind of looming, lingering fear that you're going to have another one. So I started, down my corporate career path. First of all, I'm like, who's going to hire me? But I was an internal wholesaler, external wholesaler, financial services, sales manager, business development leader. Next thing I find myself in leadership, and then running business development for a global insurer, and then executive vice president for 3 different companies, including a Fortune 68 company. But it wasn't that easy, I'll tell you that, given the topic of our discussion today.
Yeah, you make it sound easy, right? It sounds so simple. Like, wow, how'd you do all that? Those are big positions, right? If they only knew, right?
If they only knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think and as we, unpack this more and more, it had to be 3 times as hard for you, right? Like than the average person, because you were not only having to deal with the stresses of the job, but then that internal thing that you were dealing with all this time as well. So I can't even imagine. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you.
You were successful 3 times, times 3, because of the extra things that you dealt with.
Yeah, thank you for that. I spent 31 years in corporate America. I started my own business in May, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And it was great. It was a great experience. But what I realized early on, particularly with my panic and then this idea that I was going to have another and another, and I did. I had a lot when I was younger. And I think, thank goodness, knock on wood, as I've matured and aged and handled and worked on with a lot of modalities and different therapies and things of that nature. Few and far between, if not ever, which is great today. But I had to work extra hard. And what I learned early on, and ironically, I decided to go sales and business development. So why not put yourself out there if you're scared and terrified? It wasn't particularly thoughtful. It was just like, hey, this was a good avenue. You can make a couple of bucks if you're in sales. But it probably, in hindsight, wasn't the best way for me to jump into my career. Be that as it may, what I realized is that my superpower needed to become, how do I take the focus off of me and put it onto my audience? So if I'm in a sales call, for example, I would inundate the individual with questions so I wouldn't be asked questions. Because what I found is I was under the spotlight, then that's when I would get nervous and sweaty. So I'm like, well, I can turn this weakness into a strength. Why don't I just focus on the other person and really get to know them and understand them? And so I think that helped catapult me and have some success early in my career. And then frankly, I just took that same philosophy into leadership. It was never about me. Although I made it about me, because in essence, that's what anxiety is. It's like all this inner thinking and concern and the doom and gloom. But that's how I was able to manage my career. But it took a lot of preparation too, Cammie. That's the other thing that we can talk about. Like if I was going to present, it was a lot of preparation.
These are things that Invincible are made of, right? So tell us about that. So what would you say? How would you summarize that? What makes you invincible? Yeah,
so it's my concern and focus on others. Yeah, so that really was my superpower and what made me invincible as I moved through my career, was that I really would spend my time focusing on others. And then ultimately I took that weakness, which was being the spotlight, or being in the spotlight and my fear of the spotlight, and saying, oh wait, what if I figured out how to own the spotlight? And if there was a big presentation to be had, why couldn't it be me? Or if we were going into the boardroom and my boss wanted us to present a new strategy, why wouldn't I want somebody to say, why don't you do this? And they did. And so that my biggest weaknesses became my biggest strengths. And I became a really good storyteller. And it enabled me that when I was recruiting people If you understand that really who the person is across the table from you that you're trying to recruit in the organization, and then you can tell a compelling story as to why they should come work with you and follow you, then that became, my invincible characteristics that I took into my corporate career. It served me well.
That. I love that.
It was kind of all a happy accident. It was kind of all a happy accident.
Yes, and we're going to dig into that more. So today we're going to talk about speaking with confidence, and we're going to break down this SPEAK acronym, which is your framework that you use in your company and working with your clients. So let's jump in there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I was a history major in college. And so when this first panic attack occurred, I dove in. Now, we didn't have the internet back then, early days, but I had the reference books at the library. So that's where I spent my time understanding this and started to think, how can I change this? How can I improve this? What's out there and available to me? But as we talked about in pre-show in the 90s, like this wasn't a popular position or even anything that you could easily find anyone to talk about. It was, especially as a young man growing up in the early 90s in corporate career, it's like rub some dirt on it, suck it up, let's go. Don't show any weakness. If you remember the antiperspirant deodorant commercials, don't let them see you sweat. All this is ringing your head. And so what I did is started to fundamentally think about, well, how can I improve my communication? And what does it look like? And so I developed through the course of my career what I now call the SPEAK framework, which I'll jump into. But it was first and foremost like, what do I want my unique style to be? So S in SPEAK is style. Like, what do I want my unique style to be? How do I want to be perceived? And for me, it was 3 words: lofty, playful, and wise. That when people interacted with me, whether it be a new interaction, existing, my team, doesn't matter, from the main stage, from a small group, I want them to say, hey, this guy's lofty, playful, wise. Then the P is for presence. Now, what I teach in my framework is really a lot of focus on eye contact, because what I found, particularly in front of a group, so if you're anxious and you're in front of a group, one of the easiest things, it's not easy, but one of the easiest things to do is start to really focus on delivering one of your comments, one of your phrases to one person at a time. And it helps you reduce your fears in that regard, and also will help control your pace. So when we think about presence, I like to say there's no greater gift you can give your audience is to be present and in the moment. And it's really about taking the focus off of you and really understanding what's happening to your audience. The E stands for empathy. And that's really about, simply put, putting yourself in your audience's shoes. What are their considerations, their fears, their concerns, their issues? And if you're present, and then you are there in the moment, with them, and you understand kind of holistically what's happening to your audience or the person you're speaking with, then you start to tailor the comments to really land more appropriate. A is for authenticity. Like, we need to be ourselves. And for a guy who wore a mask of anxiety and uncertainty for 31 years, I can tell you that in many instances, it didn't particularly serve me well because of the pressure I put on myself. However, later in my career, as I got more comfortable, I started sharing my concerns and what was happening with me, and particularly around COVID time when it became more acceptable to talk about public health and mental wellness. People were more open to it. But authenticity really matters, and I can go into some detail there if you'd like. And then K, and this may be one of the most important aspects of the SPEAK framework, K is knowledge. And here's the biggest thing I see with every client I've worked with, every one of my employees throughout my career, when they were having difficulty presenting in front of a group, is they didn't know what to say. They didn't know where to start. They didn't know how to organize their thoughts. So knowledge is taking all of this knowledge and information we have in our head and then bringing it into a clear, concise, organized way. I call it the power of 3. So you have a roadmap that you can do, think of it like you're taking your audience on a journey. You have a roadmap, and each step is laid out. We often memorize, write out longhand. I have found, particularly if you're an anxious presenter, that memorizing is the worst thing you could do. Because if you forget what you say, you go into a tailspin. Like, oh, where am I supposed to be? And all of a sudden you're lost. I've literally seen people walk off the stage because they're so lost. So I'm just trying to make it simple, Cami. I'm trying to make it simple for people to think differently about presenting. Yes, if you're an introvert, you're not accustomed to be in front of a group, you're not accustomed to talking about your business if you're an entrepreneur. I just trying to make it easy by creating the speak framework to think about it a little differently, that it doesn't have to be overwhelming, that it can be really quite simple if you follow a process. And it's essentially the process I used to raise billions of dollars that you mentioned in the opening, to lead my teams, to manage to communicate when I had some important message to communicate. It's literally what I used for my whole career.
Wow. My goodness. That is amazing. Amazing. So tell us about how you're using this. Who are you working with, and what is the transformation that you're seeing?
This is when I get fired up. So I would say there are three categories of people or clients that I've worked with to this point. First is a leader who's taken on a new role. Like they've reached a new level and they've got to reintroduce themselves to this new organization. And like, where do I say? Where do I start? So I think of it like they're revisioning the organization. They got to communicate more broadly their vision and what it looks like. So that's one category that I've been working with. The other is individuals who are raising money. So whether it be a CEO who I'm working with that has to raise capital, or a head of investor relations of a real estate development group who had to raise $5 million in 30 days. What we did there is just look at the story honestly, and what was presumed to be a good story was a story about them, the organization, and not the story about the audience. I said, let's flip it on its head and let's make the story about the audience. And that was just unbelievable and rewarding. And then entrepreneurs. I've been working a lot with entrepreneurs who, believe it or not, you look at the statistics, 60 to 70% of entrepreneurs will tell you that their unwillingness to communicate in a network setting, to tell their story, to talk about their business, is preventing him from getting ahead. So helping entrepreneurs kind of unlock this confidence and this freedom that we all have. Look, I believe in every one of these groups and these individuals I work with, and all of us have unlimited potential. Unlimited potential. We just can't see it in ourselves. And if in a sentence, I am nothing more, not to diminish what I do, than a confidence coach. And I want to help people unlock that potential. And for me, I had found in my career that silver bullet, so to speak, is in fact communicating. And if you can persuade others and you can sell and you can tell your story with confidence and conviction and clarity, then you can do a lot of things that you otherwise would not think is possible. I'm having the time of my life and have the flexibility and freedom and ownership and responsibility to build my business and work with incredible people who want to get better, who want to improve. It's just been so much fun.
I love it. That is amazing. And you came from corporate America. You've had all of this success in corporate America. So I would love to talk a little bit about that bridging the gap, right? From leaving corporate America, which, it's a lot of work, right? Yeah. But it's scary. I find people say it's scarier to move into entrepreneurship. Yeah. So what was it that really caused you to be passionate about making that leap and doing this now and solely, working here in this business? Yeah,
as I was exploring this next move, is like, do I go back and find another job, go look and see if there's another, or start open myself up to other opportunities in financial services or any business for that matter, because I think skills are transferable. What I kept coming back to was this tug on my heart. You could say it's sadness. You could say I was pissed off. Like, I don't know how exactly to best phrase it. But if I looked back at my career and every person that I would see that I saw myself in, if I was, for instance, pitching a new business deal, I'll never forget up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, we were pitching a new deal, $130 million plan, city of Ann Arbor. And I was working with an individual on our team who was really anxious. And over that short period of time that we worked together, a few hours, I was able to transform the way she thought about how she viewed herself, to free herself up. And I gave her the speak framework to show how she could organize her thoughts. And I'm like, God, if I could do that for thousands of people, eventually millions of people, to help them unlock that potential they have inside them, to free themselves up and have the confidence. That's really what I felt like. I felt like there were people calling me to help, honestly. And it made me sad for my entire career to see individuals walk into a room and shrink, and really capable, smart, talented men and women. And I would just see them crumble and shrink when it became higher pressure or tension, or they were asked to perform at a level that they had not performed at before. And I knew I could help them. And that's why I started my business. It's really that simple. Thank you.
I love that. And you know what's really cool is a lot of those people that you worked with in corporate can still come work with you.
They can.
In your business, and you still can help them have that transformation.
Yeah.
That maybe that was something that might have blocked you before because it could have been a conflict of interest. So I think like that opens the door for you to help so many. And I love that you're on podcasts, because when you say millions, that's what you're talking about. When there's millions of people listening to podcasts, and they're going to find a lot of value in what you're sharing today.
Thank you. I looked at kind of business planning process, and I was pretty disciplined when I left corporate. And now let me go back to your first reaction. Yes, it was overwhelming, and I'll never forget the day that the exit occurred. I was lost. I mean, I went from having my day planned for 10 hours straight, 10 hours. To not have an appointment on my calendar. So from 9 a.m., the conversation took place at 9 a.m. until 4:30, I just wandered around the house, literally from room to room. I was sitting in chairs like, this is a comfortable chair. I should have sat in this chair. I was being in the moment, present, and Cammie, and I was absorbing kind of what occurred, what I want, and started to think about, okay, what am I going to do next? And then all of a sudden at 4:30 that day, I came up into my office and just started creating my business plan. It is a lot. When you're building a business from scratch, is a lot, and starting to build your audience and build out your reputation. But to build on what I said earlier, and this Rory Vaden, I've gotten to know Rory well at Brand Builders. Rory says you're most uniquely positioned to help the person you once were. And I think back to my 19-year-old self and how scared and fearful I was. And then seeing that individual and different people throughout my whole career, I'm like, I need to help those people because I want them to reach their potential. I want them to become invincible. So it's super personal for me, as you can tell.
Yes, I can feel it. I feel the energy that comes through when you talk about it. And your face, and it's just all of it. And this happened before when you and I spoke.
Yeah, it did.
Did you see that? Did you feel that? I'll never forget that moment, because that's when that's when that authenticity kicks in, right?
Yeah.
In that part of your speak is you feel that energy. You can't bluff that. That is this comes out of you, and I just love that.
Thank you.
So I see that even in today, what you're doing, offering free trial sessions. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And who that's for, and what they could expect, and how they can sign up for that. So let's go there.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So the easiest way to connect with me, now I'm on most of the social platforms, but the easiest way to connect with me is www.thescottramey.com or thescottramey.com. And people make fun of me, by the way, like the Scott Ramey, the other guy wouldn't sell the domain. So yes, the Scott Ramey. And then you can click on the bottom. At the bottom it says, schedule a free trial session with Scott. And that's how we can get connected. And if you, I'm open and I want to help. Let's just be perfectly clear about that. Yes, when you run a business, you want to make money, but I want to provide value. So, and you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. And you can find me on Facebook. And I will be giving, and have been giving away a lot of free content. Because at the end of the day, if I'm really a mission-driven messenger, my mission is to help people. If you have something more complex, more detailed, more complicated, then we probably will have to engage in something a little bit more than a free trial session. Take some time, schedule it with me, and I promise you, I promise all your listeners, I will give value and not expect a darn thing in return, because that's not the name of the game.
How would someone know what happens the inside internally, and you know this because you've dealt with this for a long time, what is happening inside that someone would know? What are the signs? Oh my gosh, I need to work with this guy. I need to have a conversation with this man, because what is it? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for asking this. Well, the first thing is avoidance. That's number one. Before you even get to the point where you're about to present, we tend to avoid individuals who are anxious like I was. And I can give you countless examples where I would literally, early in my career, I would travel into cities as a salesperson and stay in my hotel room. No, really.
I
Not
believe
not
it.
proud to share this, but that's the first thing.
No.
So avoidance. So avoiding an opportunity to raise your hand, knowing you have the answer to the quiz, you have the answer that senior leadership needs to hear, you have the answer that the CEO needs to hear, and shrinking and avoiding having that conversation. I guess that's step one. Step two is maybe more physiological, just overly anxious when you're going to present. Or if you have a message, for instance, you're at a networking event and you are asked to give a 3 to 5 minute networking or even a 30-second blip about your business, and you're so overwhelmed, you don't know where to start. That's usually a telltale sign of an opportunity to be helped. And then I think if you become very blank and you forget what you wanted to say when you actually are standing in front of someone, I think there's an opportunity there for us to have a conversation. Those are, I think, the three areas that I see most often. And then maybe the last would be this feeling that you look and feel anxious. In other words, like the audience can see it. And most of the time they can't.
Notice.
Oh, I had a conversation with who's become a friend now as CEO this past weekend. And that was my conversation with him. He sent me, I said, send me your videos. I'll take a look. But this offers up for your audience too. Let me take a look at your videos. I can give you some feedback. And his perception was that he looked nervous and sounded nervous. Not even close. Not even close. He sounded great. He looked in command. He had great presence. What he didn't have was organization and structure to his. So then he was always trying to search about what was next. What am I going to say next? And so that in that instance, a little structure, a direction, a map of what you want to say will help you. So that's what I see most of those four characteristics.
That's perfect. Oh my gosh, I love that. And now people are listening saying, that's me. How did he know, right? Somebody told him my secret. Oh my gosh. So let's tell them again, let's give them your website one more time.
Sure. It's www.thescottramey.com. And just click on free trial session. You can, on the menu bar at top or at the bottom, you'll see free trial session. And you can schedule time and we can chat about any concerns that you have.
Thank you, Scott.
My pleasure.
You so much. I love what you're doing, and I love how you're really going each step of the way through this process.